Welcome back. Ladder League Week 4 recap. We are starting with Rung 2, Senor versus Wazip versus Laser. Second meeting between Senor and Laser after Laser got an exciting victory in the first one back in Week 2. And we got Wazip here also, been making a run at things, been like really pushing for PB improvement, has a chance to maybe upset the balance of power against these top runners. And everyone's going to get off to, honestly, a pretty nice start. We're going to see a full God Fraud hit from all three runners. Very good way for things to go for everyone. And yeah, pretty clean very beginning. But it is going to be Wazip taking kind of the first stumble, and it's going to come in Maul. Really, this whole end of episode 1 sequence, not very good for Wazip, and a couple of lamp jump misses is going to put him behind. I mean, very stiff competition for him to face. You can't be taking, really any unnecessary time loss. So, tough start from him. And as for Laser, he's also going to start accumulating time losses more into episode 2. You see this, I mean, this was just not a good cave in Droid Factory. I mean, there's no one specific thing that really happened to him. But, it's just an accumulation of time is going to put him pretty far behind Senor. And it's going to get even worse early in episode 4. This spaceport, C-3PO going to hit the button faster than Laser's ready for, and he's got to do quite a bit to manage his characters to get the backup. So just another little chunk of time he's losing, and it's going to get even worse. Into Princess doesn't go for the backup shot. What could possibly go wrong? And, I mean, you can see it. There's no Obi-Wan to force that bridge. He has got to go back now after passing up that elevator to take the backup shot. And even as he goes for it, it's going to take him a couple of attempts to even get that shot off. And so, pretty big time loss by Flaming Laser. Really now, with these episode 4 time losses, starting to give an opportunity for someone like Wazip to catch back up. I mean, yeah, it's Senor and Runaway first, but Wazip could very well be close to second place if he can play well in this episode, but he's going to fall off that bridge with Han, just doesn't have quite the right angle on the jump. And, not pushing that bridge all the way. At this point, there's really no reason not to. I mean, you're bottlenecked by Han's respawn time, or may as well be pushing it, but also with those deaths, he's going to get an aggro. You have to play this very carefully, and Wazip is going to. He's going to get a new helmet that's going to de-aggro this officer. But watch that right side of the screen very closely. That officer is going to aggro very fast after the build starts, and now everyone's after him, and he is not going to keep the helmet. And to be honest, as far as I can tell, that had nothing to do with the issue from earlier. As far as I know, that was completely resolved when he got the new helmet. I mean, the officer does aggro when you start building that, but he almost never shoots you fast enough to interrupt the build. And, talking to other top runners about it, they all say, yeah, this has happened to me once, and I have no idea why. It's just an unlucky freak occurrence that can happen, but it comes at a very unlucky time from Wazip. It's going to basically erase all of the possible time save from those last couple levels he had against Laser. And also, as a result of all this, it's Senor taking just a commanding lead in this race. He's been playing, very solidly up to this point, and that's going to continue. But if his lead was ever going to start to dissipate, it's going to come in Carcoon, where he does not go for Pixel Disco still, after all these months of people trying to convince him, and he's tried to learn it a few times. Still just hasn't figured it out, so, he's just leaving his chances into the hands of fate, but he's going to get it first try. So it turns out to be actually even faster than what a normal Pixel Disco would look like. And on top of that, Laser not going to get a normal Pixel Disco. He's going to miss it on that first try. Going to take quite a long time to set it up again and again. This turns into actually just a disaster Carcoon from Flaming Laser. And so Senor's lead just continues to balloon. It's huge. One more chance, though, maybe for these other runners, as Senor, yes, he is presented with a couple of torpedoes right away, but one of them's going to despawn there in the middle, and no dupes at the start as well, and now suddenly he gets to the second ship, and there are no more torpedoes anywhere. It's really crazy, honestly, the luck here. I mean, there's not even any ships you can see, but when he does finally get some on his screen, they don't have torpedoes. I've really almost never seen anything like this. Finally, he gets one. He's not able to get the dupe. You know, the dupe would be so valuable now, especially because there's just no more torpedoes. You need to get all you can, but I'm not able to make it work. I think he even blanked one there. And it's just turning into a terrible ITDS opening, even though the torpedoes, like, slowly do start to show up towards the end. It's just not enough. And yeah, Senor is going to come away with, like, a 220 opening or something. Now, this should be a big opportunity for Flaming Laser to, you know, make up to a minute of time to that opening. But, you know, he really is not going to have much better luck. I mean, he gets a couple at the start. It is slightly better for him, but really not making up the time save he had the chance to. I mean, he doesn't have the same, like, complete drought of any ships that Senor had. I mean, that was absurd, but most of these ships do not have torpedoes. You know, there's a one bomber kind of teasing him right there in the middle. Does finally get it, and he does now finally get to see a few more. But this opening really also pretty bad from him. Just another missed opportunity from Flaming Laser. And, I mean, it really leaves us asking, where did all the torpedoes go? And here's the answer. They all went to Wazit. Every single one of them. You know, starting with that dupe, pretty nice from Wazit, but it turns out to be pretty unnecessary when, like, 10 torpedo ships just all show up on him at the same time. So Wazit is actually going to get that, like, full minute of time saved to Senor in this level. He comes away with, I think, a 457 ITDS, the best of the tournament for anyone. Meanwhile, Senor got, like, a 554. So, you know, really nice ITDS from Wazit. Unfortunately, pretty much not enough to bring him back in this race. It is going to be Senor closing out the first place here in Dagobah with this clean button skip, clean end of the run. Pretty nice finish from Senor. And Laser going to be left sort of limping over the finish line um, in this late game, but does get out pretty cleanly. Very nice deathless bridge skip to end it all off, but still really not the best performance from Laser. Yeah, 2:21:44 final time. And that really did leave the door open for Wazip. I mean, this is, you know, Wazip's PB at the time was about 30 seconds faster than Laser's time here, so it was honestly possible. I mean, you're holding him to a pretty high standard to expect Wazip to beat Laser's time, but it totally could have happened. And that leaves me really more concerned about Laser than anything. This time there was no, like, huge tech issue double Godfraud miss. I mean, he just kind of bled that time over the course of the run. You know, not great. Thenor 219.21, pretty much in line with the times he's been getting this tournament. You know, pretty solid from him. Wazip that 223 again. It's not enough to, like, you know, pull off the upset or to really get his average somewhere to maybe make the wild card match. But you know, it's at least a reasonable looking time from him. But, you know, unfortunately, it's not enough, and he is going to go to the bottom rung next week. That brings us now to rung 4, the bottom rung of this week. Daime, EJP Man, Charzite. Two runners will be eliminated here after, you know, EJP Man had what was so close to being a very nice run last week. Had that best been disaster, that's what sent him here. Meanwhile, Daime and Charzite both got 228s. You know, Daime, the hardlock and Chancellor. You know, he has yet to really show his potential in this tournament. But, you know, this is his last chance. He needs to turn it around now. And we're going to start with Charzite, who, you know, comes in as the underdog, and it's only going to be made worse when he misses ICS. Going to put him at a pretty big early deficit. The good news, though, for Charzite is he's going to be the only one to hit both laps of Godfraud. I mean, this is a spot. Charzite, the lowest seeded runner by far to attempt this trick. And, you know, that kind of thing seems concerning. Seems like it could backfire pretty easily. But actually, we've seen Charzite, in every race he's done this trick, you know, get it at least once, always save some time with it. And it's been actually a really big boon for him. So, Charzite does catch up pretty early, but it's going to take a bad death here, and this is going to start him down a pretty bad stretch of levels. Now, we'll jump ahead a little bit. What's going to happen to Charzite is somewhere in Carcoon, his computer is going to just like overheat, crash, something like that. And after trying to work it out with him for a little bit, we ended up basically allowing him to forfeit the race right there and not have to finish it because it was just going to take too long to get everything fixed and to get him back running. Also, it matters that he was, a couple minutes behind the leader in this elimination rung. His odds of surviving were at that point very low. So that is going to be an elimination from the tournament for Charizite. Um, and pretty tough way to go out when it's you can't even really play the run. But we've seen a lot of improvement from Charizite. The potential has always been there. It didn't really materialize in these races, but I gotta say I was incredibly impressed to see he got a 231 or 221. Sorry, just a couple of days after this race. Um, gonna be stepping away from TCS for a bit after that, but it's just good to see him get a good run. After that, because it didn't really work out for him in the tournaments. But I think there's been a good change of mentality. I think he's been he's been much better in the last couple of weeks on the mental side. So good to see out of Charizite, even though this race didn't come through. Now we are still left with a very exciting race for first place. Only one of EJP and Daimi can survive, and EJP Man gonna take the first hit when he misses Camino button skip. Just one miss, not the end of the world, but the rest of episode 2 is also gonna swing Daimi's way. EJP Man just hiccups here and there, just small time losses adding up for him as well. And Daimi has honestly been playing this episode 2 very nicely. He's going to get out to pretty big lead in first place, I would say. But that pendulum is going to start to swing back in episode 4. We're going to see Daimi missing Ripmore Skip, losing his helmet, quite a bit of time loss on that mistake, and a little bit more when he misses the jump into the Falcon at the end. So this is going to swing it back EJP Man's way. EJP Man is going to be the one with a lead coming out of episode 4. And this takes us into episode 6 now. Endor has been a pretty big problem level for EJP for most of this tournament, and that's going to show itself here in a pretty nasty way. He gets Han over fairly quickly on the first gate, but Leia will not be able to make it, and he's going to try and try again. Jumping up here, just cannot get his footing on that top gear, and when he does, it still misses. Very tough first gate skip, very hard trick. And that's going to be quite a lot of time loss for EJP Man. Meanwhile, Daimi is going to just absolutely nail 12 button skip, absolutely nail really the entirety of Endor. It's going to be a gold, it's going to be a sub 6 for Daimi, and that's going to put him back into a pretty meaningful lead. And he's going to carry that lead into Chancellor, where he is going to have a slip up here, trying to go for MVE, does not get out of bounds, has to just back it up. We're going to, switch to R2, use the panel. Pretty tough scenes, and it's going to basically even out the race. This race is very close into Dagobah, somewhere where EJP Man has taken advantage of runners' mistakes earlier in the tournament, but this time it's EJP falling into the drink and taking the time loss. That R2 death is bad. Doing it again is even worse. I mean, really nasty time loss, and that's going to give Daimi a big lead now and a chance to just secure the race win. Gets DV1, gets DV3 on, I believe, the third try. Pretty solid stuff from Daimi and CCT. Answers the call when he needs to, and that's going to be a win for Daimi. I mean, we've seen him struggling, honestly, so far in this tournament, but when he needed it most, when he was back against the wall, absolutely needed a good time to survive, he does get it. The 2:22.27, 22 seconds off of his PB. Really good run, and that is going to be an EJP Man also eliminated. Very disappointing to see. It feels like EJP doesn't deserve to even be in this bottom rung. We've seen EJP have so much momentum lately as well. With, he got the 221, he got, briefly bopped Wazip a couple of times. He was looking, really like he had a lot of momentum going for him as a runner, and that was starting to translate into the tournament times, almost PBing in last week's race, but gets sent to the bottom rung instead, and runs into the wrong player at the wrong time. Doesn't have his best race. and that's going to mean an end for EJP Man. But a big statement win, honestly, for Daime, kind of completely reversing the narrative on him. And we're going to see how he performs going forward. Up to Rung 1 now. Zach, Jared, Bricko, three very good runners, incredibly high ceilings on everyone. Left to see how it goes. I mean, Zach, we've had some questions, honestly, about the way he's played in the tournament so far. We just expected him to get the 1 seed, basically. I mean, almost everyone did, and he's still here in week 4, and he's going to be behind a little bit after that Godfraud miss. He's going to miss that on lap 1. Bricko is going to miss it on lap 3. So Jared, the only one to get both Godfrauds, he has the lead now. Coming into Feed and Maul, and he is going to also nail these levels. It's a really good episode 1 out of Jared. And, on the back of that, Jared is going to have a pretty big lead. But Zach is finally going to start to, rein it in and really play at his potential. Coming in episode 2, we see a series of good splits from Zach, and it's going to be enough for him to even take the lead back over Jared towards the end of this episode. I mean, Zach, we've seen him start to get a lot more active in terms of doing runs and PB attempts in this last week, and I do think that's finally starting to show. We see him stringing together a lot of, very good levels in a way that he just sometimes struggled to do in the first 3 weeks of the tournament. But yeah, he's going to be into the lead, and that lead is only going to get bigger when Jared just does some really unexplainable things, to be honest, on this pre-Cantina player 3 glitch. I don't know why he deactivated C3PO. Hard one to explain, and just a couple of misses that I don't personally understand. But it is going to, combine to be quite a lot of time loss for Jared here. And coming into Rebel Attack now, he's also going to miss Room 3 skip. So this is a lot of time Jared is starting to lose. I mean, he had that lead early. Zach passed him in episode 2, and now prime opportunity for Bricko to take advantage and send Jared into 3rd place. Out of bounds for Trash Kit, but he's going to pop in bounds. And this is a disaster. This is about a full minute of time loss, and when he loses the helmet, has to go back for another one. It's just what so commonly happens when you miss that trigger. Really bad time loss by Bricko, and I mean, this spider spawn is good, but it's not even gonna make a dent in the time he just lost. On this out of bounds now, he's gonna be heading up to this corner cut that has given a couple of runners trouble so far. I mean, we've seen Zach and Cena are on different ends of missing it. Bricko going to just die out of bounds here, and now it's even worse. I mean, we were thinking he might take the lead over Jared, but instead he's actually going to, cement himself pretty far into 3rd place in this mid game. And that leaves room again for Zach to just take an even bigger lead. He has also a good episode 6. Good Jabba's, good Carcoon. He is on a really good streak here. He's going to have a massive lead, and it's going to be enough for him to just tap in the victory coming into Bespin. A 2:18 final time from Zach. Pretty good stuff, and it is going to finally mean that Zach is in playoffs and out of the ladder. As for these other two, Bricko has managed to make up just a little bit of time to Jared in this late game, playing incredibly well. Coming into CCT, though, he needs something really good, and he is going to deliver. This CCT is going to be 300 Community Gold. That's without Fast DV1, to be clear. Just absolutely nailing every part of this level, really putting on a clinic here. And yeah, into DV3. I mean, Bricko, this is really good, but it's not enough on its own. He needs even more to go his way. Jared is going to have a not quite as impressive, but still a solid CCT. Jared is still going to have the lead going into Bespin. It's on Bricko, though. He has a chance to maybe put up a really good Bespin and put the pressure on Jared, make Jared get a flawless Bespin, something he hasn't done every week. But the problem for Bricko is that he needs the panel to have a good Bespin, and the panel isn't there. It's a Bespin softlock for Bricko. Jared is going to comfortably take 2nd place in the end. Really not a great time for, I'd say, either of those other two. Zach, though, 2:18.10, really good stuff. pretty good reversal of fortune from his earlier weeks. And, it's not like he was playing terribly at that point, I'll say, but this is definitely, a good step better. This is starting to look more like the Zach we expected in Ladder League. Um, but I'd say the question is really, is he going to keep, pushing attempts, really grinding? Because we're seeing the likes of Evan and Dragon, after qualifying, both getting really good runs, both getting 2:16:10s, tied world record. Really fascinating stuff going on there. But like, the question is, is Zach going to keep up with them? Is Zach going to, respond? Is Zach going to get a 2:15 or something? And are we going to see maybe a world record push between the three of them? Because I think if he doesn't, he really loses his status as the favorite. Um, we saw it, early in the ladder, and I think we're playoffs are really going to come down to, how much does Zach grind to really put himself in a position to win in playoffs? And this takes us now to Rung 3, the last race of the week. Justin, Colton, Mello. Bit of a mismatch on paper, at least Mellover being here. The 225 as his PB. Not ideal, but we saw that PB last week. He was like 2 minutes behind Coolison in that race, so there's plenty of time to save in the early game for his PB. But, not much time to be saved to these other runners when they're going for Godfraud. Now, Justin is going to miss it on lap 1, which does mean really good things for Colton, who is able to get it not only on lap 1, but also on lap 3. Colton is going to be taking actually a pretty big lead in first place, coming out of pod race. But Justin still gets lap 3 Godfraud, so for Mellowbro not going for it at all, that's still a big deficit. And it's one that's only going to grow as we come out of this, episode 1. Just stuff like not going for the left side is actually a big deal, Just this one single miss on lamp jump is already going to mean he gets the worst maul of the 3. It really just shows he is pretty mismatched, honestly, in this rung, and is not going to be able to come back from this. But Colton in first place, he's going to miss that turret on the top left and another one in the bottom left. Now, also, has struggles a bit with the lights, does back it up pretty well. These turrets are alive is a sort of a problem. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it does make this whole room harder. And we're going to see that early. He's going to blank in the top right. Has to kind of go over there with player 2. Now getting torpedoes on player 1 to make up for this. But somehow, for some reason, this just does not target. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. He should be easily able to shoot that pillar. It's the only one on screen, or even close to it. But somehow it just doesn't work, and he's going to have more problems than that. He might even forgot that this turret was up after all that. It's all going to amount to a pretty bad Lightroom 2 by Colton. And it's going to be a chance for Justin now. Coming into Camino, he is going to play this level very well. He's going to play this entire episode very well. He didn't just have a good episode 2. Justin put up the best episode 2 ever performed, a 2020. And honestly, I didn't realize he had it in him. I mean, he's obviously a great runner, but we're seeing him still, like, a bit of a step behind most of the top runners in terms of stuff like PB and the race times he's getting. But, I mean, this episode 2 absolutely putting on a clinic, really showing that the prime Wii Super that we all know is still in there, and it's starting to emerge. And I mean, that good gameplay is going to continue also into Junland. Yeah, really good Junland from Justin. Really good, early to mid game. He's going to come out of Junland with a 1.5-minute lead over Colton. Taking us into Endor now, and I did spread some misinformation last week. I do want to correct it. When I said that Justin shooting the troopers, needing to switch to Wicket was a mistake, this is actually just the strat he goes for. I guess it's sort of like a primary keyboard thing that he can't pan the camera to do Wicket's Grand Adventure. Regardless, I don't really understand it because it's just kind of slow. And that's not the only reason Colton saved time to him in this Endor, but, Colton, maybe the best Endor player in the community. He has a 548 gold. He's going to play pretty damn close to it, and he's going to save almost 30 seconds to Justin in this Endor. And now coming into Chancellor, I mean, The gap is starting to shrink after that Endor. Justin needs to keep playing well to stay ahead of Colton, and that's not going to happen on MVE. Going to have a pretty bad miss there, trying to reattempt the trick now, and he's going to miss it again. I mean, the time loss really starting to build up for a pretty small skip in MVE, and this finally, after Chancellor, the lead is going to completely disappear. They're going to be basically tied coming out of Chancellor. And that is going to make it even more gut-wrenching to see Colton get this re-drop-in on the Vader drop-in warp. And it's going to make him take a death at the end of this room 1. And now the race is no longer tied. Justin back into a meaningful enough lead as he comes into CCT, going to get very, very bad luck on these deflections. Almost 10 full seconds standing here. Very far cry from like the 249 deflection that we all know. Pretty tough stuff, but otherwise, the rest of the way this CCT is going to be good. He had a lead coming into it. This is definitely not enough to give up the lead. First try DV3 is a very good way to go. And Justin has this lead coming into Bespin. And you'll notice the helmet is on Chewbacca this time. Last week, Justin didn't know modified GTF, didn't go for it. Did cost him a few seconds with the one miss of the old GTF setup, but he has taken the time, he's learned modified GTF, and he is going to get it, but he's going to walk off the edge with Lando. I mean, one other difference of the strat is now you're out of bounds with a different character. Maybe threw him off a little bit. He's going to have to try to attempt GTF again, and this one's going to give him some problems reloading the room. Time loss starting to mount. I mean, his lead was... He had a pretty substantial lead, but it was not this big coming into Bespin. There is absolutely an opening of the door for Colton to come in and do better. How do you respond to Colton? He's going to have some trouble with door clip, missing it a couple times, but that is not going to be the biggest problem here. Tries to walk, tight around that corner, but Chewie's going to fall, and he is gone. He is not coming back. We saw this happen to Olive just a couple of weeks ago. The same thing for Colton. And he's going to have to do Lando door clip, and it's going to take him just a second. He's looking for Chewie. He doesn't come back. He got to do Lando door clip. And now the question really comes up, like, does Colton know how to do GTF with Lando having the helmet? I mean, because this is really what sank Olive, at least a big part of it last time, when this happened to her, is that she couldn't even go for GTF at that point. Is Colton, going to be more prepared? That's the question, because, I mean, Colton's a pretty new runner. Not sure if he had reason to learn the old GTF setup. So, coming up on the panel, that's going to be the question, but he is going to turn around, reload the room. He is going for GTF. But can he get it with Lando having the helmet? And interestingly, I didn't even know this existed, but he basically did modify GTF, but getting Leia out of bounds. I honestly, didn't know you could do that, but really good from Colton. He gets it first try. This guy knows his backups, and he is going to get it reasonably quick. Now, the first place is off the table here. Justin does get it by what ends up being a pretty big margin. But remember Daimi getting that 222.27, and that is what Colton is up against here. If Colton can't beat it, then he will get leapfrogged and sent down to the bottom rung right alongside Mello. And, having a couple of misses on bridge skip, you're starting to get nervous. Not much time left. He's got about 30 seconds to hit this trick and get into the Falcon, and he does finally land it. That is going to be, a pretty bad Bespin for Colton, but coming into that Bespin, it was a good pace. It was a 220 pace for Colton, going to be like a minute off his PB. That was almost the run I was looking for out of Colton. The kind of run that shows that his PB is very far from a fluke, and it's something he can, play to that standard in the no reset setting. He, one level away from pulling that off, though I still come away from this run feeling pretty good about Colton as a racer. Justin gets the win. 2:20.20 final time. Would have been a 2:19 if not for some struggles in Bespin. Pretty solid stuff from him. Nothing I didn't expect, to be honest. And, with him getting that PB recently is a 2:18.44, this suddenly does become a little bit of time off of PB. If he didn't get that PB, this would be 35 seconds off. I'd be saying maybe a little bit more positive things about it, but we knew that PB potential was there, and it was good to see him land that. As for Melo, I didn't really show him much after the beginning because the race wasn't competitive, but a 2:24:25, that is a minute and a half PB. I mean, this run completely like took advantage of a lot of the time he had to save in the early game and played just as well in the late game as he did last week, maybe even a little bit better. Melivero, minute and a half PB in this race. It's not going to be enough to keep him above the bottom rung, but in my mind, that PB is a huge step towards making him feel like a legitimate contender in that bottom rung race and not just a sacrifice in the way that he kind of was in this week's race. So there's the recap. Now let's talk about the playoff picture in the wild card watch. Now, three more times yet to be claimed through the ladder, and you can see sort of a very clear top three forming, especially on the average. Senor, Brico, Jared, minute and a half gap to fourth place, but all within 4 seconds of each other on the average. Incredibly close, and it does certainly feel like if any of those three don't make it directly, they have a very safe spot in the wildcard match. We're really looking at like Laser and Justin here, but they both still have about a minute over Colton, who, if nobody unexpected makes it into the playoffs, then we're going to take the next two, which will probably be, top runners. Colton either needs to make it directly or he needs to somehow make up a minute on average to either Laser or Justin. The problem is that like we're 4 weeks in, those averages are getting harder and harder to move because there's a bigger sample size. Really, the problem for the wild card with these runners is that you just cannot fluke a better average than somebody over 7 races. You can beat someone that's better than you in a one-off race, but you cannot over 7 races get a better average than someone who is like minutes ahead of you. We Colton or Wazip would have been needing to play like really well, like getting PBs in basically every race to have a good chance at the wild card average. And that's just not going to happen. That's not a reasonable thing to expect, and they're not going to do it. But I will say they don't have to fluke their way into playoffs, or they don't have to get into playoffs on fluking an average. They can fluke a one race if they can just get into the top rung. So let's talk about the scenarios. We only have 3 weeks left of the ladder. What would it look like for one of these runners to make it to the top rung? Now, first, this is sort of like a very chalk scenario I have in front of me. Um, you can interchange a lot of it, like the entire finish order in like rung one next week. I didn't put a ton of thought into that. I just kind of put down an approximation. Really, the thing I'm looking for though is the divide between the top runners. Really, Jared, Senor, We Super, Brico, Laser as our top runners, and then like Colton, Wazit, Mello, Dimey are sort of our outsiders. And you can see that like if everything kind of goes according to plan, Brico and Laser both get their promotion to Rung 1 next week, and then whoever loses Rung 1 this week comes back with a win next week against two runners from kind of the bottom rung, or at least outside of the top runner structure. You see that if that all goes according to plan, then it's only going to be top runners in Rung 1 the entire tournament. So something needs to happen to upset this balance of power if anyone even wants a chance of pulling off that upset. So, for a non top runner to make rung one of two things needs to happen. First, if any of Colton, Wazip, Daime, or Mello, if any of them can beat the time that either Laser or Brico gets in week 5, that will either mean for Colton a promotion to rung 1 or for the other three a leapfrog into rung 1. That is, the best chance, and not only do they get the chance in rung 1 of week 6, but whoever is in that week 6 rung 1 also guarantees a spot in week 7 rung 1. So if somebody can pull that off in this week, they get 2 chances in rung 1. And honestly, if you put Colton or Wazip in rung 1 twice, it is a completely realistic thing that they can get one of those 2 race wins. I completely believe they're capable of doing it. But the problem is that it's not even super likely that they make it there. Now, the other option is that whoever loses week 5 rung 1, they're going to come down to the elimination rung, probably against, like Colton and Wazip, let's just say. They have to not win that week. One of the Colton or Wazip would have to beat them to make it to week 7 rung 1. The thing is, what we're basically left with is sort of there's 3 weeks left. You kind of think of it as like a best 2 out of 3 series that any of these non-top runners are fighting against just the general group of top runners. Because they need 2 of the 3 weeks to go their way. One to get promoted into rung 1 and another one to win and actually make it into playoffs. So, it's still pretty difficult. We're not really talking about a fluke to get there. But we've seen improvement from Colton and especially Wazip lately, finally breaking through on a PB. I think these guys do have what it takes to maybe make it interesting. I'm certainly going to be rooting for it. Because we could get some crazy drama. I mean, the implications, if one of these guys does actually make playoffs with the top 7 seed, then, I've been sort of brushing off the wildcard stuff lately because it seems pretty clear who's going to make it. But suddenly, one of Laser or Justin probably are going to even miss the wildcard match entirely. And then 2 top runners are not going to make it to playoffs. The implications of one of these guys making playoffs would be immense, and it would just make everything more exciting. The average difference right now between Laser and Justin is only 6 seconds. So, it really is important for those two to stay ahead of each other in case this happens, because you want to at least guarantee yourself into the wildcard match. Now, but you also really don't even want to have to be there. As we get into predictions, week 5 rung 1, it's Jared, Senor, Justin, and very notably, I think, not Bricko. Bricko, I would consider the strongest runner left in the ladder. He didn't entirely show it last week, but I still think he is the best runner left. And it was very interesting. We thought, maybe there was going to be like a 4 or 5 matchup between Bricko and Zach, and I don't think either of them would have been happy about that matchup. But not going to be the case. Instead, whoever wins this race gets the honor of facing Zach in round 1. But I think it's still really important for these guys because, look, there's only 3 chances to avoid the wildcard match to just qualify directly. Only 3 of those chances left. And at least one of them, you got to think Bricko is going to be in and probably win. If you assume that Bricko is going to qualify top 7, then you basically have 2 non-Bricko chances to get out of the ladder before the wildcard match. And that's what makes this rung so important, is that Bricko is not here. So it's just that much more beatable for any of these runners. I mean, any of them could beat Bricko, but it's going to be easier when he's not there. Now, for my prediction, Jared comes in as the favorite. I'm not going to take him. I still think he's, erratic enough. It's kind of a random enough outcome that I'm not going to put any confidence in him. I actually think the best value here is Justin. I think that we're starting to see him really come through with better times, and we're seeing him, start to look like a top runner, at the same level as someone like Senor. I'm not going to take Justin for my actual predictions, though, and this is just more of like a game theory thing. I have the Justin over 7.5 placement pick, and I'm at a point with predictions where I do feel like I need to take some risks. So I need to kind of make predictions that can be possible together. If Justin wins this week, I'm missing that placement pick. If I want a chance, I need to hit both this race and all my placements. So instead of Justin, I will be taking Senor with the 3 points. I do think it's, incredibly close matchup here. Genuinely no idea what's going to happen. I'll go for Senor, though. Alright, this brings us to rung 2. Bricko, Laser, Colton. Bricko, the clear favorite. I said I think he's the best runner left in the ladder. Laser, honestly a little concerning with his last week time. Something that Colton was about to beat, on pace to beat into Bespin. This is where when I talk about taking risks, I think this is actually a really good chance to do it. Colton has a 219, and he's closer than he ever was to matching that in a race last week. So, if Colton gets a 219, he could get first place. That's totally viable. And I don't think that's that crazy of a scenario. I'm just going to go for the 10 points. I'm going to pick Colton. And, we're going to see what happens. Now, one more race to go over, but I will not be the first to predict it. Let's hear Jar Jar's lock of the week.
Welcome to Jar Jar's Lock of the Week for Week 5. We're going to be showing you a little Among Us game that Jar Jar played, where he's going to give you his Lock of the Week, which is Wazip. So we're gonna see we're just gonna see Wazip and Jar Jar make this happen here. Looks like Jar Jar's looking around for somebody to kill. Oh, okay. We're in Nav now, seeing Mellow, Bro, and Diamond. It looks like he's faking some tasks. And oh, the perfect time for a double kill, Jar Jar. And there we go. Look, it's as simple as that. Jar Jar and Wazip, victory. Wazip taking the victory. There we go.
And you heard it here first. Jar Jar taking Wazip to win this week. Now, I can totally see why he's done it. Wazip, a lot of improvement coming out lately. He's had better tournament times, basically the whole way than Daime. Last week being the lone exception. It does set up a pretty interesting matchup after Daime gets that time last week. But I still do agree that Wazip is the clear favorite. I think Wazip also gaining a lot of confidence getting this PB. It might enable him to even get over, to get the 219 barrier. I think we're going to see, good momentum going forward for Wazip. As for Mello, yeah, I do believe in him as a racer. 12 points is a lot, but I just don't think, I think this PB gap is too big to justify it. I'll just go for Wazip. I'll take the safe play here. I have taken my risks elsewhere. That is going to be my final prediction. And one more thing to mention, the Frog of the Week. Now, it's weird because the only possible leapfrog is somebody leapfrogging out of Rung 3 into Rung 1. And it's just tough because I don't think that is very likely to happen. Now, the thing with Frog of the Week is it hasn't been about making a bold prediction. It is really just me trying to give my most honest view of who the likeliest leapfrogger is. But I think the likeliest outcome this week is that there are no leapfrogs. It's just Flaming Laser and Bricko both a step ahead of every runner in that bottom rung. It would take, a pretty big lift for someone to beat him. And if someone beats them, it might just be Colton doing it. And that's not a leapfrog either. So this is going to be the end of Frog of the Week. After this week, it won't even be possible for a leapfrog to happen. So, you know, unfortunate that we lost the perfect streak last week on the EJP man thing, but I can say I'm still satisfied with what the Frog accomplished in this tournament. And on that note, that is going to be the end of the recap. We got races coming up, coming at you fast. Thank you for watching. Go watch some TCS.